Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Friday, August 21st, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. Today, Star columnists Vahe, Gregorian, and Sam Mellinger discuss the Chiefs' announcement on Thursday to prohibit headdresses and Native American-style face painting at home games this season. As you might expect, the decision received plenty of attention and generated much reaction, especially on social media. Vahe, Sam, and I talk about the timing of the announcement and what it means for the Chiefs going forward. So, here we go. All right, Sam, Vahe, great to see you guys. And, I think I looked this up. It was July 8th when we talked about the Chiefs and imagery and what might happen. And that was in light of discussions that were going on in Washington and Cleveland about nicknames there, right? The Redskins and the Indians. And it wasn't long after that Washington made its move. I don't think Cleveland certainly hasn't done anything with the Indians nickname, still in discussion, I guess. But we talked about it and what might happen in Kansas City, and turns out something has happened in Kansas City. And we learned yesterday, on Thursday, that headdresses and certain kinds of face painting, Native American imagery face painting, will be outlawed from Arrowhead Stadium this year. So I guess my first question would be, what's our reaction to this? And do we anticipate more changes down the pike for the Chiefs? Hey, Vahe, let's start with you, because let me just say this too. All three of us have written a lot about this topic, and I think we're pretty much on the same page when it comes to this. And I'll just speak for the group, if I may, and say we think the Chiefs are moving in the right direction here.
Yeah, Blair, and look, I'd say that, but I'd say it a little tentatively. I think it opens up a door a little bit more. It does one thing in particular that's kind of interesting. Our friend Rhonda Lavaldo over at Haskell sort of pointed this out, both on Twitter and in an interview she did with Sam McDowell, that by doing this, the Chiefs are acknowledging appropriation, that these images are that. And to her, that acknowledgement does not go far enough. It's saying, you're moving down this rabbit hole, but you haven't really gone to the more substantial issues. And I get that we have many people we know that are on a lot of different aspects of the spectrum of this, the way of looking at this. But so I just thought that's a very thought-provoking way she's put it. But she is someone that believes the Chiefs' name needs to be eradicated, for lack of a better term. And I think we're all still trying to come to terms with how we look at that. I don't want to put words in your mouths, but I think I still feel my comfort zone is this question about how much can the Chiefs uncouple themselves from the imagery that sort of, takes advantage of their name in a uncomfortable way. Anyway, that's just my little first burst.
That makes sense. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, so I look at this as not news, actually, what they did this week. Like the headdresses and the face paint, that was always going to be gone. We talked to, Mark Donovan, a month and a half ago, and he was really, generous with his time and walked me through, their thought process and everything. And I felt like he did everything in that moment except say headdresses are gone. Like, I feel like this was always going to be where they landed on that. And that's kind of the easy decision in a lot of ways. There's not a lot of people like save the headdresses. You know what I mean? Like that's not a thing that people are really defending. And it's kind of been going away sort of quietly the last few years. The Chiefs have discouraged, headdresses for more than a couple of years. I mean, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, I think. And so now the sort of the debate, the fight is going to be over the chop. And that is a whole different thing, because there are a lot of people that are going to, sort of stand up for the chop and endorse it or, want it to stay. And that's going to be the new fight, because, all these Native American groups, and I give the Chiefs, some credit. They have handled this situation I mean, exponentially, a million times better than the Washington football team ever did. And that was part of why that ended in disaster over there. And the Chiefs have they've done their homework. They've been, sort of genuine in their at least openness to talk about these things with certain Native American groups. Notably, the fair criticism of that is, they have not brought into their circle anybody who wants the name change. They're not going that far, or at least opening the door for that. But the next debate is going to be about the chop, and that's how this is always going to go. And I kind of felt like the way they announced this, headdress is gone. We're in what they say thorough discussions, something like that about the chop. Kind of feels like a trial balloon to me, to see what Chiefs fans feel about that and how they'll react to that.
It strikes me, just one more quick aside, if this were a game of chess, they basically just put a couple pawns out, led with some pawns, and sort of say, like, okay, we know we're comfortable feeling the ground out this far. Uh-huh. But certainly a recognition that the real defining aspects of this are in front of them still.
Well, if the Chiefs were a chess master, they would know who's going to win the match here, and maybe they already do. Maybe they see the board 10 moves later and know that checkmate is coming for this, whatever that would be.
But it's also, just real quick, like maybe Blair, I'm jumping ahead in what you're going to ask about, but one of the complications about the chop, there's a lot of them. One, this particular election year, this has the potential to sort of become a big national, like, sort of, hot topic. And the other one is, let's say that the Chiefs announce today or tomorrow, whatever, that the chop is gone. I don't know how that's enforced. You know what I mean? Like, we all know that the chop will still happen. Fans will still do it. Now, will that die out over time as the song's not played and those kinds of things? I don't know, but it's a lot easier to ban headdresses, I guess is the point. That's a tangible thing that you can say, nope, can't go in, you got to take that off. But once you're in the stadium, I don't know how you can keep fans from doing that if they want to. And we know that a certain number of fans, I think a large segment of fans, are going to want to do it.
Well, if I may chime in there too, I mean, I think that's true for sure, Sam, but I also think the Chiefs can take measures to say, we don't condone it. They can do things to avoid, starting it up. And at least then they're kind of on record as saying that, we're not part of this. Now, how much that matters in the long run is another question. Then you just kind of get to the next frontier of where the battle is. But I think that's a tangible thing they can do. Disown it, basically.
Yeah, they can kind of wash their hands a bit, but I think and I don't know how long it would last, and the fact that there's only 16,000 people in the stadium, at least in the beginning, that complicates things further. But it's still, at least in the beginning, it's still going to happen in their stadium, and I just don't know. Maybe saying we're not going to play the song and we don't condone this or whatever, maybe they feel like that's enough. But it's a different, even the logistics, even like when you get into the weeds about it, it's a different deal than it is with the headdresses.
It is. Hey, we're in a hand washing mode these days anyway, right? So maybe
right. Sanitize.
Right. So a couple things, Sam, to your earlier point about the Chiefs have been moving toward this, at least the headdress and the face painting for a while. I'd say they've been moving toward it for years, just by asking television not to show the fans with headdresses, and we've seen that occur over the last several years. You just don't see fans, games on Fox or whatever network. You don't see the network show fans that wear the headdresses.
And not just that, but the video board in stadium during games.
Absolutely.
They don't do that either.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. As for the chop, we talked about this 6 or whatever it was weeks ago on this podcast, that the Chiefs stopped playing the music once upon a time and got such a bad feedback from fans that didn't last long, right? The that came back, and the Chiefs contribute to that, right, by playing the music. So that, to Vahe's point, yes, the Chiefs can certainly play a role in discouraging the chop. Now, I went on to our Facebook page, to Sam McDowell's story, the news story about the headdress and the face painting, just to see what the reaction was. Social media is not always the best place to look for reaction, but at least there was a reaction there. I wanted to see what some fans were saying. And where you can click an icon on like, love, or anger, whatever face that you decide to click on, when I looked at it this morning, there were still like 850 of those type responses, and I would say 3/4 of them were positive. Either for the news of the face painting and the headdresses being eliminated. So 3/4 of them either liked or loved it, and 1/4 of them with the angry face. But when you got to the comments, and there were a ton of comments, a lot of the comments centered on the chop, not about the headdress or the face painting, but about the chop. And that seems to be kind of near and dear to the Chiefs fans' hearts. And they're the ones that are saying, just try to stop us from doing the chop. You can't do it. I think one thing that can happen is if fans feel strongly against the chop, they can boo the chop, right? They can have a reaction to the chop in the stadium. Now, I can't remember this ever happening in any kind of sporting event where fans, kind of policed themselves and turned on each other a little bit. But I suppose that could be a possibility, especially after reading some of the comments about, do away with all of it. Do away with all the imagery and the chants. Just do away with all of it. And I don't know, maybe I did read some fans who said they don't participate in it because they find it offensive. Would they take that to the next step and just, condemn it vocally?
Blair, you bring up a really interesting point, right? Because and both you guys have, obviously, but the idea of this, at some point, who's to regulate this but the people themselves, in a way, right? I mean, telling you can't come in and do a physical gesture mandated by the state, for lack of a better term, however you want to put it, that's a little, I don't know, it's a little complicated to me. But social pressure does tend to have an impact on things over time. And I'll say this, there are, in my feedback I've gotten on this topic, there certainly are vehement, angry people about, not wanting anybody to mess with this tradition. But I've actually heard from way more people than I thought I would that feel like they've had a little awakening on this, and not only don't want to participate in it, but won't condone it and will condemn it. Now, how that works in real time inside a stadium is, the $64,000 question. But I do think there's an interesting question to be asked about how much this should just come down to people settling this. Not settling it themselves. That sounds funny, right? Like, put up your dukes. But people's ability to work with each other on social pressure.
Well, I think that's you said it sounds strong, put up your dukes. Look, guys, there have been fights at many a Chiefs game.
I don't want to advocate that.
Yeah, but if we're going to have a stadium full of football fans, of Chiefs fans, and take away something like that, and if it gets that, I mean, that is not only is that not out of the realm of possibility, that is well within the realm of, I would think, probability that there could be some stuff. And I don't know how you deal with that. The one thing that I can see, if the Chiefs, after their thorough discussion or whatever, they feel like they feel strongly about this, that the chop needs to go the way of the war bonds, of the headdresses. Your quarterback is pretty popular. Put him on the video board, reading a statement about, this is why we're doing this, and this is not who Chiefs fans are, whatever. That's the only thing that I can think of that, to me, would, sort of actively dissuade from the Chiefs, from the franchise point of view, to do that. Now, I don't know if they feel that strongly about it. I don't know if you can't make Patrick Mahomes say something he didn't want. I don't know how he feels about it. There's a lot of complications there as well, but it's just the enforceability of this is just an interesting topic to me as well.
It's an interesting question about Patrick, too, because obviously he did the Black Lives Matter video. I thought about this. I think we might have even sort of asked ourselves about this a little bit. The wording that he had the other day in one of the interviews we did with him on Zoom, it seemed like he used the term the Washingtons when he was talking about the football team. And this is only conjecture, but it seemed like he was kind of screeching on the brakes when he was going to say, the old name or something like. He was very cognizant one way or another of just saying Washington. And so when you think about those sorts of things, it suggests that he's cognizant of all these issues, right? And it would be very interesting to have a serious discussion with him about how he sees this element. And he probably is the sort of voice that people would listen to on some level, but there would be a certain kind of backlash at that, wouldn't there?
Sure, there would be. Sure. Well, along those lines, as this story and this process evolves, I find the Chiefs are probably have never been in more of a position of leverage for something like this than they are right now. Coming off a Super Bowl victory, the most, the vibes for this team are just as positive as they've ever been. And the fact that they're going to limit capacity at Arrowhead Stadium to 22%, and they could have just said no fans. Some NFL teams are doing that, but they're letting in 22%, which is somewhere bordering on 17K attendance for home games. It just seems like the time is right to make a move or moves like this for the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, there's never been. I shouldn't say never, but I don't know when the last time there's been this sort of movement, this sort of national push. It's a decision. If they decided to say no to the chop, I think that decision would be, I think this is fair, criticized. It would be unpopular locally with a lot of their most passionate fans. And I think it would be popular nationally, just because it would follow sort of the more broad trend. It's wild. I mean, look like of all the things that have changed in 2020, this would be pretty far down the list, right? But one of the sort of indelible, kind of visual and audible takeaways of the Super Bowl was a whole mess of Chiefs fans there. They got their hands on tickets. A whole mess of Chiefs fans all around that stadium, filling it with the tomahawk chop. And it was before the game, it was during the game, it was all throughout. And it's wild to me to think that, what are we, 6 months, 7 months out of that Super Bowl, that would already be like an outdated image. It's pretty crazy to think about.
Okay, hey, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Okay, back with Sam Mellinger and Vahe Gregorian. Let me run this other idea by you. In the statement that the Chiefs issued yesterday, I thought it was actually a well-crafted statement explaining the Chiefs' position, what they're trying to do, what they hope to do. And I thought there were a couple things that I wanted to ask you guys about. One was they've actually been in conversations with local Native American leaders since 2014. And then in the last couple years, they've expanded that outreach to national Native American leaders, which I thought was significant and important. They weren't just listening to people here in town, but just trying to discover and learn how this affects people, Native Americans throughout the nation. And I thought that was significant. And the other point is, for the last few years, the Chiefs and other NFL teams have celebrated Native American Heritage Month. It's usually a home game in November. And it's during that game where the war drum is blessed, and there's I forgot the name of it exactly, but the four directions, maybe bless the four directions, and then Native Americans sing the national anthem. I apologize for not getting that right. But I got to tell you, if it weren't for the Chiefs' Native American nickname, I don't know if I would have known this stuff. They at least have brought some education to this topic to people that probably have never been exposed to Native. And I think that's, if there's a counter argument to be made or a counterpoint to be made, it's by trying to do it right in an educational way. That as long as they're going to keep the nickname, the Chiefs, I think that has to continue or should continue.
I totally agree. Like that is that is a real thing, and we've heard that from John Learned and some others, and it can be a really compelling point, because if you take this to the extreme, and the Chiefs won't say this, like at least not publicly, but if you take this to the extreme and just say, okay, we're going to wipe out Chiefs, it's going to be the Kansas City Kings or the Kansas City whatever. Now an NFL team, a very popular NFL team with a huge platform, has no motivation, no reason whatsoever to do any of that educational stuff. None of the pregame blessings that's done in front of thousands and thousands of fans. They don't have any reason to do art shows or more education things like during the week leading up to. I mean, it's gone. And that's if you eliminate that, what comes in its place? Because something is, and it's not going to be what you're talking about. It's not going to be those education pieces. I think that is a real thing that is, to me at least, a compelling argument.
Well, I think you guys hit on part of the complexity of the issue here too, right? I mean, Native Americans can't be considered a monolith, right? I mean, there are varying views, varying beliefs, varying tribes, obviously, and just like that, a lot of different interpretations of what that is to have that done. I think there are absolutely some who feel it's an appropriate honor, but we've certainly heard from some who don't feel that way. And one of the terms that Bob Prue from here in Kansas City, I spoke with a few weeks ago for this. The exact term eludes me, but he made the point that you better know how those being honored feel about the way you're honoring them. And that has stuck with me a little bit. And again, though, we've certainly heard from voices that very much appreciate that, but also we've certainly heard from just as thoughtful and equally powerful voices that feel that it's a misuse of and even abuse of the heritage.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, and I don't know how you not police, but I don't know where you find where that line is drawn, because we tend to. I do this. Native Americans, like that's how it's listed, but that's a wide range of people. Just like white people or black, whatever. You've got different tribes, you've got different geography, you've got different ways that those people identify with, Native American heritage. And, these broad strokes about like all Native Americans, sometimes I feel like we can get into this rut where it's like all Native Americans are offended by everything, Chiefs has to go, all this stuff. Or there's people that say like, no, I know one Native American and he doesn't care and he's a Chiefs fan or whatever. And we can sort of lose touch that there's disagreement, and it's just not a broad stroke. And the only thing I know for sure, whatever the Chiefs do with the chop, they're going to be criticized for it. There's going to be people angry with this decision either way.
Yeah. Well, Sam, I referred back to this a couple times because I was so struck by it, the way you wrote it the other day, but about remembering to try to put the extreme voices on all sides in a little bit of a context or compartment. But the flip side of that right now is in this, I find myself thinking about, well, to what degree are the most extreme voices ones that have to be heard too, right? Because they represent something. But I do think in the most useful dialogue ways of coming to rational solutions, you have to get to a place where there's actually an intellectual aspect to it that's, takes out some of the emotion. And we're having a hard time getting to that, I think, because I think it is so filled with emotion.
Well, to your point, Sam, a lot of not a lot, but there are a handful of comments on our Facebook page that people identify as Native Americans who say they don't, they're fine with all of it. Nickname, sure. Chop, all of the imagery. Yeah. And so, yes, you're absolutely going to find people like that. And before I forget, what I was referring to earlier, the blessing of the drum and the four directions, which happens at the game. And the Chiefs did say, or made a point to mention in the statement that there'll be more opportunities for education, cultural education for Native American, which I think is interesting. So, okay, hey, I think that's going to do it for us. I appreciate you guys spending some time and talking about this. Sam, I know you're going to write about it for Sunday's print editions of the Kansas City Star. I'm looking forward to reading that. And you guys have a really good weekend, and I'll see you guys on Monday.
Yeah, me too. See you guys.
See you guys.
Well, as is often the case, there was a point I wanted to make during the show, but forgot and let it slip. Anyway, I had such a good time listening to Sam and Vahe. But my point is this. The Chiefs can ban the headdresses and certain types of face painting from Arrowhead Stadium, but we all know the Chiefs fans are among the best travelers in the NFL. What's to stop those fans from wearing the stuff inside other team stadiums? I guess we'll find out. All right, let's roll with the credits after our final show of the week. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Tip of the cap to Sam Mellinger and Vahe Gregorian for joining me today, and read their stuff and all of our stuff at kansascity.com. Hey, earlier in the episode, you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer. It still stands and still a good one, $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes Sports Extra that comes with the e-edition. There's more than 50 additional pages of national sports coverage today. Well, here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, business, and local coverage with that edition. The details can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best news and sports coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thank you so much for listening, and we will be back on Monday with a new episode.